On December 10, 2003 in Giul, Romania, the Transylvania region, two children, Luca and his sister Lepa, 11, were exploring the basement of the old house they just moved into several weeks before, when the unexplainable happened. What took place over the span of about 2 weeks before that day, though, was utterly terrifying. Luca told his story 12 years later. It's been translated from Romanian to English. It's hard for me to talk about this, but I'll do my best. I tell you everything I remember starting from the day it began. My parents had just divorced, and my sister and I went to live with my mother in another part of the old part of When I first saw the house we were going to live in, I remember thinking, this place is old and horrible. I don't want to live here. Being only 9 at the time, I had no choice, and living with my father wasn't an option. When we first walked into the house, I was surprised by how big it was. It smelled old and musty, though I didn't like it. Lepa and I walked around the house, exploring, when we came to a creepy looking black door. Before opening it, we looked at each other, and she could see I was nervous. Go ahead and open it. Don't be a wimp, said Lepa. Shut up, I'm not a wimp, I said as I opened the door and could see some stairs leading down to somewhere dark. Let's go down, said Lepa. No way. Maybe another time, I responded as I shut. Welcome to Dark Rot Legends ... where fear takes form and shadows tell their stories. Let's begin. The door and headed to my room. Whatever. You're just scared, she said. I ignored her as I went upstairs to my room. As I was unpacking my things, I kept seeing the black door and the stairs leading down into the darkness. I had no desire to go down there, but knew Lepa would push the idea until she got her way. A few hours later, Mother called us from the kitchen to go down and eat dinner. As I walked down the hallway in the stairs towards the kitchen, I turned on the lights, but noticed the house still seemed to be dark. The lighting was not good. More reasons to not like this place. We were mostly quiet as we ate dinner. Things were still awkward and uncomfortable since they divorced. Mother was sad and hadn't been herself for several months. She continued being a mom, but was quiet most days. We went to bed a few hours later. As I slept, I was having vivid dreams when I felt something climb onto my bed. I immediately sat up in a panic, but quickly noticed it was Lepa. What are you doing, idiot? Get out of here, I said. Come on, let's go check out the black door and see where the stairs lead to. I got a flashlight, she said. No way. Get out of here and let me go back to sleep, I replied. She grabbed my arm and started pulling me out of bed, saying, come on, scaredy cat, I'm not going by myself. Geez, what time is it anyway? I asked. It's late. Who cares, she responded. She's a persistent person and wouldn't stop unless I went with her, so I decided to just go get it over with so I could go back to sleep. As we quietly crept down the hallway towards the stairs, my mind was telling me this is not a good idea. I played it off as me not being brave like Lee was. She never feared anything. I always admired her for that. When we got to the black door, I was trembling so bad I wanted to turn around and run back to bed, but knew she wouldn't leave me alone, so I took a deep breath and decided to continue. Lepa noticed this and whispered, you're always so scared of everything. Stop it. She then reached out, grabbed the handle and turned it. The door creaked loudly as it opened. She grabbed my hand as we slowly started walking down the steps. The flashlight we had didn't work very well, so it still seemed dark and unpleasant to me. As we walked down the stairs, I could hear a slight humming sound along with feeling some vibrations. I thought, what could that be, but didn't say anything to Lee as I was too scared to talk. Once we reached the bottom of the stairs, Lee started shining the light around to see what was down there. I noticed there were several rooms and no floor, only soft dirt, and it seemed to be damp along with being humid. As she was shining the light over in the left corner of the basement, we both shrieked out as we saw a flash of something. Whatever happened next happened so fast we didn't have time to see what it was. As we both hit the ground, the next thing I remember was hearing our mother shouting our names as She was looking for us, we're down here, shouted Lepa. Mother then came running down the stairs saying, what are you two doing? I've been looking for you for over 10 minutes. What time is it? I asked her. It's 7 a.m. and you're going to be late for school. Get upstairs now and get ready and don't come down here again, you hear me? She replied as she grabbed us, dragging us up the stairs. I was shocked as I realized we'd spent the entire night down there. I then remembered the flash and being knocked down. Whatever it was must have knocked us out or did something to us while I was at school that day. All I could think about was what happened in the basement and trying to remember anything. If I could, I wanted to leave that house and never go back, but no, money was tight. That's why Mother decided to stay there. I dreaded to walk home from school. As we talked my ear off about what happened in the basement, it was almost as if she enjoyed it and got excitement out of it. For me, it was the opposite. When we stepped onto the walkway leading up to the front door, I remember looking up and thinking, something is very wrong inside this house. I kept that thought to myself, though, as I didn't need to hear any guff from her. Mother wasn't home from work yet and wouldn't be for another 2 or 3 hours, which meant we'd be home alone, and at be dark we sat and watched TV until Mother came, ate dinner, then went to bed. A little while later it took me a long time to fall asleep that night. I kept hearing noises and kept thinking Lepa would walk into my bedroom again. I was wrong. Nothing happened that night. It wasn't until 2 days later it started again. As we walked home from school that Daly was going on about something as usual when suddenly she stopped talking, looked at me and said, we're waiting for darkness. What are you talking about? I asked. When it gets dark, we're going back into the basement tonight, she said as she continued walking towards home. No, I'm not. I'm never going into that basement again, I replied. Oh yes you are, she said as she looked back over her shoulder at me. All I could think about the rest of the afternoon was nighttime coming, and I dreaded it. I knew how persistent she was and would basically force me to go with her. When Mother told us to go to bed that night, I quickly left the kitchen, heading to my room. As Leo walked by my room, she stopped, looked at me and grinned. No, I'm not going, and you better not wake me up, I whispered loudly. She said nothing as she headed to her room. A few hours later, as I was sleeping, I was awakened to something grabbing my hand and pulling me off the bed. I jumped back but quickly noticed it was Lepa. I told you I'm not going. Let go, I said. Whatever, come on, she replied as she started pulling me along. I was too tired to fight her argue, so I gave in and went along. It wasn't until we came to the black door I was fully awake and wishing I'd fought with her to stay in bed like before she grabbed my hand. As we walked down the stairs, about halfway down, I again heard the humming and felt the vibrations. I squeezed her hand tightly as I was scared to death. When we were almost at the bottom of the stairs, I heard what sounded like scurrying coming from somewhere in the basement. What was that? I asked in a fearful tone as I immediately froze in place. It's nothing, come on, quit being a chicken, she replied as we turned the corner. Lepa shined the flashlight into the pitch black room. What I saw standing there has haunted my dreams every night since. There before us stood what looked like a disfigured man-looking thing, but with 2 heads and multiple arms on each side. It came straight at us and was on us in less than a second. I remember it grabbing us both as it lifted us into the air. It then started speaking something in a strange language, then dropped us to the ground and walked away. I remember as I hit the ground, I watched its feet moving away from us. It wasn't until the following morning I woke up to my mother angrily shaking me and Lepa saying, I told you to not to come down here. Do I need to put a lock on the door? I'm going to be late for work. Get up and get ready for school. Now I was about to open my mouth and tell her what happened, but Lepa was looking at me with the fiercest look on her face, like I'd better keep my mouth shut or else. I decided not to say anything, got up and went to school that day. As we walked home, Lepa was quiet, which was not like her. I could never get her to shut up. This worried me almost as much as what we saw in the basement. Even then I still wasn't sure what we saw was real or not, or if I had dreamt it. All I figured maybe she was just frightened of what had taken place later. I found out that was not the case. It was something much more sinister what took place over the next week and a half. Was kind of a daze, except for the last 2 days. I still remember most of what happened during those days, but not everything. Each night we'd go to bed like usual, wake up and we'd be in the basement, but in different areas each time. I swear I thought Mother was going to kill us. After a few times she bought a lock and installed it on the door. It didn't matter though, we'd still wake up in the basement with the door being unlocked. The night before the unexplainable happened, I remember waking up in the basement and coming face to face with the two-headed disfigured thing as it held me in the air. I say it or thing because I don't think it was a man of sorts. I think whatever it was trying to mimic a man, but couldn't get it quite right. Over the years I've tried describing what it looked like, but every time I try it becomes a blur. As it held me, I looked over and could see it was holding Lepa as well. It suddenly dropped me to the ground, grabbed Lepa with all of its arms and again spoke something in a strange language. This went on for a while before it dropped her to the ground along with the flashlight she was holding, then walked off into the darkness and disappeared. I laid there all night, unable to move. As I stared at the wall, Lepa was laying on her back with her eyes wide open as she stared up at the ceiling, laying there watching her stare at the ceiling all night with something. I'll never forget, it was like she was hypnotized or something. When morning came, I stood up, walked over and helped Lee up. Do you remember anything of what happened last night? I asked. No, nothing. What happened? She replied. The thing was here. I woke up to it holding us. It then dropped me and held onto you while it spoke in its strange language. I saw you on your back, looking up at the ceiling with your eyes open all night, I said. We then walked upstairs to the kitchen and could see it was still fairly early in the morning, so Mother wasn't awake yet. I looked at Lepa and said, we need to tell Mom the truth about what's going on, even though she won't believe us. I then saw Lee get a look on her face I've never seen before. She got extremely close to me, looked me straight in the eye and said, if you tell her, I will kill you. I stood there in shock, scared out of my mind as she turned and walked away. I didn't know what to do at that point. I knew for a fact even if I told Mother, she'd get mad or laugh and think I'm crazy. Right then I cried as I wished I could speak to my father. I knew he'd at least listen to what I had to say and would pretend me. Lepa and I didn't talk the rest of the day. We went to school, came home, but instead of her watching TV with me like usual, she went to her bedroom and shut the door. As I watched TV, I tried taking my mind off of everything, but it was always there, just in the back of my mind. Mother came home a few hours later like normal, made dinner, made small talk, then sent us to bed. I didn't usually close the door to my bedroom, but I did that night. I wanted it all to stop. I must have fallen asleep because I was awakened to my door opening and Lepa walking in. She didn't say anything as she walked over, grabbed my hand and dragged me along with her. I tried pulling my hand away, but she was holding it tightly, so tight in fact it hurt like hell. Stop this, let go of me, I whispered loudly as I fought to break free. She said nothing, just continued walking towards the basement, taking me with her. When we reached the top of the stairs leaning down to the basement, she suddenly stopped. Right then I yanked my arm as hard as I could, breaking free of her grip. She turned and looked at me. She had the blankest, most frightening expression on her face I'd ever seen. She then turned and continued walking down the stairs. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to go wake up Mother, but another part of me was worried about Lepa and I didn't want to leave her alone. I decided to follow her. As I slowly made my way down the stairs, I whispered loudly, stop Lepa, stop. She said nothing, just continued going down. I paused on the stairs for a moment, afraid to go further, but she was my sister. That made me continue. I took a deep breath and walked to the bottom of the stairs. Once she reached the bottom and turned the corner, she was out of my sight, and the stairwell was now dark because she was holding the flashlight. I could faintly see the light as I turned the corner. As I did, I gasped as I could see the thing holding Lepa high in the air. It looked over at me, immediately dropped Lepa and started coming my direction. It was me faster than I could think. It raised one of its limbs, spoke something, then hit me on the side of the head. This sent me to the ground. I was still conscious as I watched it walk back over to Lepa, pick her up and walk off into the darkness. I cried as I laid there moaning in pain. I could feel the warmth of blood as it trickled down my forehead. Lepa, Lepa, I said aloud over and over again. I laid in that spot until morning. I remember hearing Mother yelling from the top the stairs, "Seriously guys, you're going to be in big trouble if you're down there. Come on, let's go." "Mother, help me," I said. "What are you all right? What's going on?" she replied as she came running down the stairs to where I was laying. "Oh my lord, what happened to you? Where's Lepa?" she asked. "I don't know it. It took her," I replied. "What took her? What are you talking about, Luca? Where's Lepa? Tell me," she said. I pointed to the direction it took her and said it picked her up and walked towards that direction. I replied. Mother quickly ran over, picked up the flashlight that was still on and started going through the different rooms yelling for Lepa. I've never seen my mother more frantic in all my life. Once she checked the entire basement, she ran upstairs and called the police. She then came down, picked me up, carried me to the living room, set me down on the couch and waited for the police to arrive. While we waited, she bandaged up my head as I told her everything that had taken place over the last 2 weeks. Her expression didn't change as I mentioned the thing that took Lepa, so I wasn't sure if she believed me or not. Once the police arrived, Mother told them most of what I told her. They quickly went down into the basement and looked for her. When they couldn't find her there, they searched the entire house. One of the police officers sat down next to me and had me tell him everything I told my mother, and I did just that. I remember hearing one of the officers yelling from the basement, saying they found something. All of them, they went running down the stairs into the basement. When they came up a while later, I could hear them talking about the strange footprints they'd found in the dirt and how they abruptly ended at the bottom of one of the walls, like it had walked straight through the wall. The police searched the house and premises for another 7 days but were never able to turn up anything. I knew they'd never find her. I also knew everyone dismissed my story as being fabricated, being I was only 9 at the time, but I know what I saw. My mother was never the same after that. When I got old enough, I moved into my own place. I still see her often, but she's a shell of a person now. I knew that thing was somehow controlling her. Not a day goes by where I don't miss Lepa and think about her. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe. Thank you for joining Dark Rot Legends. Subscribe for more tales of terror. If you dare.